year, but they insist on sending stuff out, and of course that just builds the cost, and now the cost in the budget of administering the system versus the revenue they generate is out of whack. So the way they resolve that is we got to raise the revenue. So those are the kind of dynamics that you get into when you create a program like that. And my concern is that that's very counterproductive. And if we're going to pursue this kind of a discussion, that's great. But I'd like to see how it can be administered in a cost-effective fashion, and not something that is basically we create another bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy, which is put on the burden of the business guy who's already trying to get his business, on an even keel in terms of financially being viable, and that's the problem with these kind of programs. And obviously, it's when you get into remodeling or building a new building or going in and renovating a building for a business thing, that's going to trigger your building department and the building codes, and that's kind of where maybe we should be looking at in terms of how we interact on the level here, rather than trying to create this front. Now, a lot of times when you're in business, and I know this was something that was kind of a challenge, and that's where the county clerk's office with the fictitious business file is stated. But when you go to a bank, and you go to even a place like Costco or some big wholesaler, and you want to establish an account as a business, they want to see evidence that you're really a business, not just some person coming in off the street trying to hustle a deal, kind of masquerading as a business. So one of the things over the years I've had people ask me is, why doesn't the county have a business license? So at least they have a piece of paper on it. It's like a birth certificate or something. They can show that legitimately, and that's where the fictitious business file kind of, in a de facto fashion, provides that for the person. But there again, the cost of administering that program, to just file it, they'll publish a thing in the paper, and by the time you get started, it'd be several $100.
Yeah, I think.
How often do you run into that? You don't do that very much.
We run into what Supervisor Chapman just mentioned is sort of our role now, as if, say, somebody wants to open a restaurant and they need to modify the kitchen or the dining space, and then so we run into a building permit issue.
Right.
And we make sure that all the ADA stuff and all those things are. But we also run into the situation where they didn't do anything, either without a permit or didn't need a permit in the first place, so now they're operating something that isn't ADA compliant or isn't compliant with the health department. It does happen.
Does it?
Mm-hmm.
How come you guys never let me get away with anything?
Well, you're on our list.
You're unique.
Anyway, I think that we could discuss this further and maybe eke out the pros and cons.
Yeah. I want to thank staff again for this, and this is the first step towards simplifying, hopefully, the process of a building permit application.
That's the first time you think. The first that is older.
Well, of course. Love them and hate them in the same sentence.
So we'll put them.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Good. Good. And Mark, I'd like you to come up with some suggestions to improve your department, such as the online application process, and like we talked about when I came to your office.
Certainly.
Thank you.
All righty. Thanks. It's nice. I enjoy going through it. Obviously, didn't have time to spend much time as I will, but it's a nice overview. Really, it's well put together. Yeah.
Well, I think Galen and all my staff, we're lucky to have all the people we got right now.
Yeah. Well, before we move on, sorry, I did have one thing.
No, I said 10.
So on the organizational chart,
Can you give me a page?
yeah, 52.
49 pages.
What?
What about the vacancies?
Page 8. Okay. The
Shoot.
okay, so there's several unfunded. Those are one obviously from the back in the day when they were so they're not part of the budget.
Well, actually, there are some positions that are gone altogether. We've kept some position control in case we want to fill them and don't want to come back to the board and reestablish them. But as you point out, there's 5 or 6 unfunded. They're not budgeted, but we've kept the position control.
And then so like the numbers in brackets, like the chief planner 9037. What is that?
That's a big position control number.
That's an employee number.
From administration personnel.
Yeah. So the, for instance, Thomas is listed as senior planner.
Mm-hmm.
And then so a chief planner would be promotion, obviously.
Right.
So can we talk about some of those type of things?
Absolutely.
Promoting.
I caveat that with then I'm going to turn to Richard in personnel and know what I'm supposed to talk about when I'm not, and I'll get wise on that. But yeah, absolutely. This is public information. It's not.
Okay. So the chief planner position vacated when?
Galen was promoted to assistant director probably a year ago. Sorry, my body is ringing.
That's a $10 fine.
Okay.
That's why I don't join you guys.
Payable to the general
I don't have
fund.
$10 to give away.
So, so Galen promoted out of there, and then Thomas stayed at senior planner.
Well, Thomas actually advanced to senior planner roughly about the same time, I think,
a year ago.
a little bit more.
Okay. All right, we'll talk more. I wanted to. Okay.
Can I ask you a question? What's the difference between a building official and a building inspector?
A building inspector is our field guy that actually goes out and performs the inspections. The building official can act in that capacity and does frequently if we have a heavy inspection load. But generally speaking, I want that person to be in the building to work with people at the counter to give the right information, to give the right requirements, and doing some of the plan checks. That's good.
Talked about the CC.
We'll talk about it next time. We're in the midst of, we're going to be adopting the newest version of the building code, and we expect to do that probably this summer. Late summer.
Well, what happened to the people in Sacramento that superseded us from doing that?
Superseded us. Well, we have been remiss. We haven't adopted anything in 8 cycles since '91, and we have our Title 12 building code.
We adopted the '93 stuff, but after that, because the board placed some caveats and conditions in the ordinances in terms of how staff could just unilaterally implement sections in the back and the appendices. Instead of coming back, we were then basically told by planning staff or building staff at that time that there's this super body down in Sacramento that administers, so in lieu of local agencies having that kind of control and authority, that they can do it for us, and then they stop bringing to the county board that role now.
Right, and we should be recognizing it every time there's an update and adopting them, but it is applicable no matter what. The difference is that if we don't adopt it, then we're not eligible to adopt appendices that allow us to do other things, which I am in favor of. But I can't speak to the past.
Well, I just would like to ask Mr. Chairman when they do bring that in, and I believe they should, and I've been disappointed that they haven't for a number of years now. Is that the question was raised, and this for what it's worth, because this is how it plays out. And I'm not knocking these guys, because these guys have all come about since the staff that we had that handled it in this fashion. So this is no criticism of them, because Galen was probably just barely born when they were probably missed early like this, so can't blame him. No, but they came in, and it'd be like they're big fat tunes, and so we'd ask specifically, okay, the difference between 91 and the 93 version, the 94 version, because they're coming 3-year cycles. And the billing folks and the planning folks would stand there and say, well, we don't know of anything that's different. You know, it just that they tear off a cover, put another cover on, they sell you another copy, and it costs money, and you have to go through that. And the board, you know, very compliant, you know, went along with staff and trusted that judgment and representation. And so we adopted. And then a few months later, they go in the back of the tomb, you know, and they find, you know, in the fine print on page 937, some obscure provision that allows them to kind of go to an end. And they go out there and they do that. And it just, you know, the contractors and the people out there, you know, they're all of a sudden now subjected to this new provision. And so when they would, you know, rebel, which they should, and challenge it, they said, well, who in the hell approved this? Well, rather than taking ownership of the fact that they determined, they says, well, it was approved by the Board of Supervisors. And so next thing you know, all of our phones come blasting off the wall, and we call in appropriate staff, and staff would say, you know, yeah, obviously we adopted it, but we asked, you know, what in this provision was new, and that might have been one of the changes that was made that was lost in the discussion. I mean, even staff didn't realize it at the time when we asked them the question. So what the board provided in the ordinance is that any time there is a provision of the code, new or old, that had never been implemented before or imposed or enforced before, okay, before they go out and enforce it, that they would bring that to the attention of the board. The board would have a public hearing. We would then invite anybody who would be interested in that issue to come forward and let's debate it. And we would then, the board would be in a position of either affirming their previous action and say, okay, as of this date, we're going to start enforcing this provision of the code, or we would adopt an ordinance that would allow us to repeal that portion and rescind it from the previous adoption. So that at least if we're going to get taken to task for that action as a board, we would do so with our eyes wide open. And it was in that context that all of a sudden they didn't need the board to adopt the codes anymore. So I would hope that when we bring them back in and we do that, that we have a provision along those lines provided so that they're not put in a position where they're making that decision and going and enforcing something, you know, contrary to the rest of us being advised at least first. And I think that's where we were at when this kind of stopped happening. Like I said, it's been a good 10, 12, maybe 15 years now since the last time the board has really been an active player in that world. The city just recently adopted all their provisions, and they asked similar questions, got similar answers, and we'll see if, you know, if the process is observed. But it's not fair to everybody concerned, and it's not fair to staff. But we had a couple staff people at the time who felt they knew everything about everything, and they didn't need any of the rest of us to help them out.
And if I may, you're absolutely right. We do blame the board. But that said, Galen is...
I blame the board too because they trustingly adopted something blind being represented.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You screwed up, you trusted us. But we plan on... We had hoped to implement workshops in March and just not have the resources to do that. But what we plan on doing is having a variety of workshops, working with contractors and engineers, so that there's no surprises. And because there are significant changes, there's things that we haven't been doing that we need to be mandated to. And so
let's get that out on the table first and get everybody involved in the future. Because even when you do that, you're going to have a process to do that, and I agree. But even in that setting, there's going to be something still that's going to be missed. Because, I mean, this thing is like, it's huge, and it's in fine print.
Exactly.
And but anyway, but I'm just saying is that in the future, as part of the process, if we stumble across something that we should have been doing, but nobody was aware about having to do, before we just unilaterally implement, like in the past, we have a vetting process to bring it back through, so everybody's on board in advance before we start the enforcement process.
Understood.
And that's all I'm asking for.
How close are the codes between the city and the county?
We want to be exactly the same, but they have adopted a different version than we hope to adopt this late summer. They have adopted the 10, and we're going to adopt the newest one.
I think they adopted the 13.
But I don't. Okay, that maybe, I don't know. But we work closely with Charlie, the inspector over there, and, you know, we have reciprocity. We help them, they help us. It's been really great. The last year has just been working together.
They should be fairly close.
They should be.
And even what we really want to do, I mean, it's one thing to be implementing consistently the same codes if possible, but we also want to have, you know, similar policy decisions so that contractors don't have to do one thing different in the county versus the state. So that we've been advocating meeting with the city. We have a couple of times.
Now, when you adopt these codes, there's the base code, which, you know, I mean, in terms of the volume, and then there's these add-on options in the back, which are generally in the appendices. And so you really don't have an option. You have to pretty much adopt the main part of the code as is. And where you have local discretion really pertains to these appendices part. I mean, we learn the value and the importance of that. And I think we should, as we go through this process with workshops or whatever, we need to sort through. Because some of them may be germane to us, others may be totally immaterial.
Absolutely.
And they're not mandated.
And they're not mandated, but they're recommended that they be considered. And if we have a unique situation that warrants whatever that extra piece is, they encourage you to incorporate that into your code. Some agencies will come along and they'll just adopt the thing in its entirety, including the appendices, not realizing what some of these
what they've
codes are.
just done. Yeah.
But, so I think you need to do it with forethought, not afterthought.
Well, so where are we at with the sprinkler deal, sir?
That's one of them.
Stuck. Really a tragedy.
And that's why, and that information is kind of, if I may, is in this report too, if you're kind of reading between the lines. We have had 12 times more comprehensive, big-scale remodels than we had back comparative to 2006 when they were pretty much even. You have the same amount of number of remodels as you would, and that's part of the reason, because you can remodel and do, the state leaves it to us to define as when it's a remodel. We have some control over at what point we can, how we can exempt people from the sprinkler requirement.
And that's been one of the policies we've been crafting. We have probably 5 or 6 draft policies so that when somebody comes to the counter and they want to remodel and it's, you know, X amount of square feet that was damaged, we're not just, they don't think we're making it up. We have a policy. This is the policy. Some policies will be department, some will be with CAO, and some will be vetted through the board, depending on what kind of policies they are. But those are the kind of things that I want to daylight as an agency, so it doesn't look like we're just willy-nilly making decisions. But sprinklers have been a terrible thing to the local economy. We haven't had but a handful of houses. One of the houses we know of, at least one that was built with the sprinklers failed and flooded the house and did a bunch of damage. And you know, and you hear reports about people having to do it, and then they go immediately get their C of O, and then they run out and drain their lines because they're afraid that they're going to leave for the winter and they're going to get everything ruined. And that's it's a real tangible fear because it happens.
Okay, is there any other questions? Any questions of the public? Okay, well, thanks again. Yeah.
I'm going to sit down.
Okay, so correspondence or information for the board?
I have a couple of quick items. As the board's aware, Director of Child Support Services resigned effective today. That, of course, is a board-appointed position. If the board, unless I hear otherwise, I planned on making a recommendation to the board next week for an acting director in that capacity, and then to ask for direction for recruitment into a permanent position. I'll be putting that on next week's agenda. We have a similar situation in the CSAC Excess Insurance Authority delegate and a Trindle delegate to the JPAs. I have been and would like to continue to be the main director for those agencies, but Mr. Nichols was the alternate, so we need to appoint an alternate. I've had some staff members express interest in serving on those, and if the board likes, I'll bring back a recommendation on that as well. Meeting in Beaver next week, and Tom and I are going on a tour of her lawn tomorrow, so we should have something to
So the meeting in Beaver, what's the logistics for that? Can we review that quickly so we know?
Sure, we're gonna meet at the
Memorial Hall.
Veterans Hall rather than taking a bus because of agendizing issues. Susan, did we decide 9:30 or 10?
I have big question marks here. We
Okay.
decide. Everyone was supposed to
Let's
talk.
do 9:30 closed session and 10 o'clock for the opening, if that works for the board. That'll give an extra half hour for four of you to get up there. Aaron can sleep in.
No, you screwed up.
Every week.
Every week. Yeah.
Oh, that's why we're here.
Just enjoy my painful.
Yeah, we could make it 8.
Snow.
If it really snow, that's good.
Good. That's go both ways. 4 feet of snow.
So, and then where are we meeting up there?
The Veterans Hall.
And then we're going there. We're taking a field trip to Little Valley too.
Right, we will reconvene in Little Valley for sure. Tour, is that what we're talking?
Yeah, tour.
We need to kind of
Right. Look,
talk it down before we use today on that, so I know what we're doing.
all I have.
All right. So we're going to wrap this up, and then we're going to continue on with the closed session. Is that correct?
Right.
Can we take a look? We're going to continue working through.
Let's recess for a couple minutes, and then let's see. I know you said you were going to try to go over politics.
One. We could take up, we could just reconvene at 1 o'clock. That's- We can try
Right.
to get water.
So we're recessing right now.
Yeah, we're recessing now.
How long?
2 weeks.